Hi everybody, Norman Van Aken here with my treasure book series. There are intersections in all of our lives, and with being a chef, one of the intersections, a big one, is when you go from understanding certain kinds of cuisines, but then something kind of clicks and you realize it's time to take another giant page from the book of cuisine and find a book or find a teacher or find a place to live or something that is going to markedly distinguish you from where you were, say, a year ago. In 1986, 1987, I was looking for my voice in terms of not being a copycat of all the teachers I had before me, whom largely were affected by French cuisine and various American cuisines. And that's what I absorbed, and that's what I needed to absorb. The foundation, there has to be a foundation. But I was living in Key West, and I had the feeling of Spanish things from before Key West became known as Margaritaville or other things. Spanish was spoken as much in Key West as English, if not more, especially there in the early 70s when we first got there. It was, as I say, right around 87, 88. So I don't know how I came across it, but I did. And I came across a book by a gentleman named Colman. And Colman wrote a book called Catalan Cuisine. And that book was one of those major drivers in me that moved me from being the chef I was before to the chef I was moving to become. And here is that book. Here is this book by Colman. And on the back flap, there's the picture of what he looked like back then with a famous guy behind him. He's a big, strong football sort of size looking guy, and my gosh, what an extraordinary life he's lived. You should get his memoir. It's fantastic. And he sent me a copy. But like I say, I guess I could have found a book on Spanish cuisine. Well, I did, by Penelope Casas, but I might have talked about that one already. But this book also coincided with when Pearl Perry and I decided to take what was an underutilized space upstairs at Louis' backyard and create what we called the cafe at Louis' backyard. And with that, we had our downstairs menu that was very popular with locals and tourists. Beautiful location on the water. But upstairs, I wanted to find another way of expressing myself and to do a cafe in much the style that Alice Waters had done with the cafe at Chez Panisse. So speaking of Alice, she has this great quote here. Colman Andrews' passion for eating and drinking reaches its perfect expression with his discovery of Catalan cooking. His humor and repertorial instincts make this book, at the very least, irresistible. Reading it for me is a great source of inspiration. This man, I can only think of maybe 4 or 5 other people I've ever met that have that kind of intellectual curiosity and hunger and passion, Rabelaisian in style, as Colman. And the first person I'm thinking of like that would be the late, great R.W. Johnny Apple, who wrote for the New York Times, as most of you would know. I went through this book like a detective, looking for ways that I could begin to push and massage my cuisine from being kind of French, American, with touches of the Caribbean in there, but I wanted to find more the mother countries, which included Spain and Portugal and the Catalan region of Spain. And here he has so many words then in so many recipes in the language, the Catalonian language, which allowed me to not only integrate the flavors and the styles and the methods of cooking, but also some of the words. I wouldn't have been smart to have integrated the words totally, because I would have lost the audience. They would have thought that I'd lost my marbles and I was, pretending I was something I was not. But to draw inspiration and to be able to include some ingredients that I wouldn't have included, like sobrasada, the sausage that is so flavorful. And he also had a Catalan pizza called a coca. We had a pizza oven upstairs in that cafe, and I began to make pizzas that were influenced by reading this book. This book is not one of those books with a ton of photographs. As a matter of fact, I don't believe there are any except for the picture of Colman. There are drawings, sort of in the style of James Beard in his book. Last two things I want to talk about. Colman and I have become friends, and it will be a great pleasure someday when I can sort of slip this into an email or somehow get it to him and let him know just how much this book has meant to me. Our mutual great friends, Dean Fearing and Robert Del Grande of Texas, Dean from Dallas, Robert from Houston, have occasionally joined together in a musical way and played. Dean and Robert are sort of formally in a band together, the Barbed Wires, and they let me play the harmonica, and they let Colman sing, and Colman sings with great energy and passion like he brings to everything else. In the book, what I came across was when he and his family had dinner one night in 2018, May 30th, 2018. I don't save things like this often, but for cookbook authors and things like that, I certainly will. And to be able to slip it into his book and see that it's there, that's kind of a nice thing. That brings me back and know that I've fed him. And lastly, this beautiful, he signed it for me. He wrote in Spanish, or probably the Catalonian dialogue, for my friend Norman, Maestro Chef and Maestro Jugador, I had to look that up, de harmonica player. With a big hug, Colman. It just doesn't get any better than that. If you can find your passion in life and make it your life's work too, boy, that is a lucky thing, and I'm happy for you. I've been able to do that, and it's fun to share these books with you, and I know that you'll be able to find this book online and get it for not much, because that's the way it goes. But Colman will love the fact that you have it, and he'll get joy out of the fact that you cook from it, just like I would for any of my books. All right, folks, that's this treasure book, and I'll talk to you again before long. Enjoy cooking and reading.